I'd like to call the meeting of the Urbana City Council to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ammons?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Jacobson?
Here.
Mr. Madigan?
Here.
Ms. Marlin?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Smythe?
Here.
Mayor Pressing.
Here. First item is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, March 21st, 2016.
Second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Brown. Any additions or corrections? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Are there any additions to the agenda?
I have a question. It
Sure,
could be.
go ahead.
So I know we wanted to discuss the paraphernalia piece. I didn't know, I know we can't take action on it by being there. Should we just wait and do that at the committee?
We're going to have that at the committee meeting, and we have a memo on it and everything, so.
Okay.
Okay, any other?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Eric?
There is an item I'd like to discuss at a future time. I think
Okay.
that people may want to prepare for it. And this is, specifically, I'd like to have a public discussion of what council members are allowed to do and not allowed to do under the Open Meetings Act. Because I've had communications with Mr. Simon that have left me perplexed. And I
Okay,
think it needs to be discussed in open meeting. I would suggest, unfortunately, I'm going to be away next week, but maybe the next committee of the whole after that, if that
that'd be
could
fine.
done.
That would be like the 25th, April 25th. Okay, Open Meetings Act, we can do that. Any other additions or comments? Okay, we will have.
Actually, I do have one comment.
Okay, go ahead.
So I just wanted to note for the record that during that Cunningham Town Board meeting, there is something to be said for government efficiency. That meeting took 2 minutes. We all earned about $42 or $43 for that 2 minutes of time, and that turns out to be about $1,260 an hour. So congratulations, everyone. We are apparently 5 times better than the best paid attorney in town.
How often does that happen, Mr. Madigan?
Actually, more times than not. It's never 2 minutes, but I've noted, I do the calculation every meeting, and we often earn north of $300 an hour for our time. So I think there is something to be said for supporting consolidation of the township into the city government. I think it could be done with a little bit more efficiency, and if nothing else, we wouldn't be in the embarrassing position of earning multiples of the best paid professionals in town.
Okay. Eric?
So actually, I'm really glad you said that, Mike, because I have been researching the procedure for doing just exactly what you said. And so, in fact, I guess I'd like to discuss that at a future meeting.
Okay.
If we can. I guess we have two people who'd
We
like to
could
do
do
that.
that at a.
I would second that
town-
motion.
We could do that at a, well, we could do it at a city council meeting or a township meeting, whatever
Right.
you want. Okay, we will put that on a future agenda. You guys can tell me which one you want. So anyway, we're at public participation, and we have Bishop King James and Reverend Dr. Evelyn B. Underwood, who do not wish to speak, but are concerned about the Dr. Ellis subdivision sewers. Okay, Mike Melvin. Would you please state your name into the microphone, and then you have up to 5 minutes.
Sure. My name is Mike Melvin, and I'd like to speak not so much for or against the fee changes for possession of marijuana. I like to state that in my years, I've never smoked marijuana, and also I've never smoked cigarettes, not one, my whole life. And it's mainly because both my parents did smoke cigarettes, and I've seen the cause that it does to their health. Plus, I had asthma, and I wouldn't want to try either one of them. And I think that cigarettes do much more damage than marijuana does to an individual. But there's certain things that I disagree with about the council members, about what they spoke about in marijuana, that basically that it doesn't have any bad effects. And I'd like to disagree with that pretty severely. Last January 25th of 2015, there was a university student killed. He was trying to sell, I think, 3 bags of marijuana, and there were 2 other minorities involved in that sale. And they had eventually committed murder on him, and then his body was dumped in Savoy. And I think there are consequences, and to me it seems that it's not really fair to the family members that happened to. After that happened, I think he majored in math, statistics, and probability, and I don't know where you find what the statistics or probability of being killed in a sale of marijuana. And by minimizing the fines of marijuana, I think that you're showing people that there's not really that much wrong with it, that nothing can go wrong. And I don't know, by minimizing it, to me it seems like you might increase the amount of marijuana in the city. And if you do that, how are you going to prevent other murders such as this happening? And I'm sure that this is not the first time this has happened anywhere in the United States. And I have no idea how many people have been killed in the sale of marijuana. And to me, it just seems like it diminishes his existence in doing such. And I just don't understand some of the council members' theory in trying to minimize this, because in this particular case, all 3 of these people were in minorities, and I think they were all 3 adversely affected by this transaction. And I just feel really sad for the family, and I don't know how, other than the medical marijuana, to me it would seem like it would be a safer way of distributing the marijuana, because there's less likely of someone being robbed in or around a facility such as that. So I don't know how you can prevent another tragic, incident such as this at the U of I. This was the first time in 16 years that someone was killed at the U of I, and I would hope that someone would remember that and take that into account. There's something else that I have a problem with, and it's the Supremacy Clause. The Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution, Article 6, Clause 2, establishes that the Constitution, federal laws...
You have 1 minute, Mr. Melvin.
Okay, I won't have time to go through it, but basically what it says is that states cannot have laws that are in opposition to the federal laws. So I think if we oppose the state, or if we impose the federal laws, I think the federal laws should be changed. I don't think that we should have laws that don't abide by the federal laws, because I think that it's very chaotic when something like that happens. And that's basically all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rose Rodriguez.
Thank you very much for taking my comment. I am actually here today to propose an alternative avenue that the City of Urbana could take when it comes to taking disciplinary action for the possession of marijuana. I'm proposing a progressive fine. So depending on how much you have on you when you are arrested, you would then either pay however much that weight in marijuana would be by street value, if not even doubled it. My rationale behind this is someone who has $10 street value worth of marijuana it's definitely a less severe offense than someone with a pound of marijuana on them. So it's a way of not having a blanket offense for people that clearly have a different situation. It also dovetails the idea that the more that you have on you, the more that you probably paid for it, the more money you probably have, where it's less chaotic to charge someone who has $10 worth of marijuana on them a $500 fine, where you can see someone with $500 worth of marijuana on them being able to pay for that $500 fine, if that was still the case. So what I was proposing was anywhere from 0 grams, which could be remnants, residue, crumbs, pieces of paraphernalia where clearly they had smoke, such as a joint, up to 28 grams, which is an ounce. And then anything after that, of course, it starts getting into, is it a possibility of intent to sell, which is a whole other can of worms itself. But this is what I'm proposing in order to make it fair to those who have more on them, as well as fair to those who have less on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Franco Benjamin, Hamza Azan, and Nigel Smucker.
And Mayor, I'd like to introduce them a little bit.
Okay.
As soon as they assemble. Well, really, I'm going to let them introduce themselves somewhat, but I just want to say that these represent a group of students at the University of Illinois who are in the Ag Ed class 480, which is taught by Cecilia Suarez, and it is a class that focuses on collaborative leadership skills. They'll explain that perhaps better than I have. But I want to just introduce the 3 people who have come from the class. Franco Benjamin, let's see, and Hamza Ashan, and Nigel Smucker. And they have a great project that they've come to the Urbana Sister Cities program to introduce and to encourage our participation, which we are gladly doing. So, gentlemen, why don't you explain what your goals are and what your interest is?
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Our project is Readers Are Leaders, and the premise of our Ag Ed 480 class is to build a bridge between different organizations in our community. And we saw this as an opportunity to extend our community and include our sister city of Zomba in Malawi. If you guys don't know, Zomba is actually our sister city with Urbana, and Mr. Roberts is the chairman of that committee. So we saw this as an opportunity to get involved and start a book drive to send books to Zomba, because one of the biggest problems they face there is their literacy rate. And compared to the United States and even different countries around Africa that border Malawi, their literacy rate is still pretty low.
To help with raising the literacy rate, we decided that we wanted to collect books, gently used books, or donated money so that we can buy gently used books. To do this, we're partnering with APO, which is an RSO on campus that one of our group members, Natalie, who's not here right now, she is a member of APO. And so she's got that. This week we actually have our book drive on campus out on the quad. We have made contact with the middle school here in Urbana, and plenty of the English teachers have shown interest, and we are working with getting boxes there in the middle school in their homeroom so that they collect them there. And we have reached out to the Leadership Center as well on campus, and they're going to help us with promotional materials and just getting it out there to the rest of campus.
And with our project, we're actually working with the African Library Project, which is an outside group. I think they're in New Orleans, and that's the people that are going to help ship our books. So what we need from the city of Urbana and like the people of Urbana, we're just asking for any donations, whether it's a book, gently used book, or monetary donation, because we do need $500. Just to ship the 1,000 books. We might even need a little more just because hardcover books, they do cost more for shipping. And so we want to encourage participation because we feel like even though we started it, we want this to be going on, let's say 10 years after we come visit. We want this to keep happening in Urbana. We want Zomba to have more books. We want them to improve their literacy rates because it would look great on us as a society. And I mean, I think it's just an important cause, just because they are sister cities, and we can't like leave them in the hagging.
Ultimately, our goal is to send 1,000 books because that is a goal that the African Project Library wanted us to do. And in order for them to ship our books to Malawi, they do want us to get 1,000 books. And as of right now, we are paired up with a primary school in Malawi. So our connection has been made, and there are people looking forward to our books. So we'd like to encourage all members and citizens of Urbana to help us with our book goal and helping us get 1,000 books and $500 for shipping.
Charlie?
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I guess two suggestions. One, I take it from this that you're after children's books. This is good for a primary school, right? So you have an age range of what, 4 to 12, roughly?
Yeah.
Kindergarten to 6th grade type?
Yes.
Is that, okay. And then I would suggest probably working with Dennis and maybe Diane to set up at the farmer's market for some collection points and stuff like that. I don't, yeah, how do you want to, how do you want to collect your books? Where are you going to be taking them for drop-off and stuff like that? That would be information we'd need to even put it on the city webpage.
Okay.
Bill?
I might have missed it. Did you say you had a deadline of any specific time? Or?
Our deadline is May 15th for book donations because we do need to get the books to New Orleans by June 1st so that they could send them to Malawi.
Okay, thank you.
Do they have teachers to teach reading to the children?
Yes. With the African Project Library, their mission is to build a library for schools in need. So the school in Malawi has sent in an application and been approved. So the African Project Library will be building a library for them that will be supplied with our book drive donations.
Okay. Diane?
So Urbana is very supportive of children's literacy, and you really do need to have a specific collection point so that we can share this information with people.
Yeah.
So do you have one yet?
Yeah, we have a few in Urbana. As of right now, we will be having a box in the Urbana City Building. And we do have boxes like at the University of Illinois main campus as well as boxes in Urbana Middle School.
So you can send a list of those sites?
Yes, for sure.
Great.
Okay, Aaron and then Eric.
So I don't know if you gentlemen are aware. Are you aware of the Independent Media Center?
No.
Okay, so it's just right around the corner from here. It's the old post office building, 202 Broadway, and there's a project called Books to Prisoners Project that has won awards all across the state for sending books to citizens who are incarcerated, and many of them have mastered the mailing process and all the information and book locations and stuff. I would strongly suggest that you speak to some of the people over there. They may be able to help you and may be able to provide some books or something like that. Brian Doliner is here, is from the Independent Media Center. You should talk to him before you leave.
Thank you.
But thank you for what you're doing. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Eric?
The other drop-off site that I would suggest is the Urbana Free Library. You'll definitely have a lot of traffic of people who will be sympathetic to what you're doing. So I think a drop-off site and a little bit of a display explaining what you're about would be very effective there.
And all these three buildings are very close to each other in Little Urbana. Dennis?
And, okay, it's turned on my mic. So also, the Urbana Sister City Committee has scheduled an exciting event at the Urbana Free Library that's going to happen in April. On Saturday, April 23rd, we're going to have a performance by Mama Edie. She is a well-known, nationally known storyteller and a performance artist who is going to come down from Chicago, and she's going to perform an interactive storytelling event at the library upstairs in the Busey Mills Room on the 23rd at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the library has agreed to partner with the Students Project and the Sister City program by accepting book donations at that event. So there's another opportunity to come to the library and support the students' wonderful project, and to drop off books, gently used books for young readers, to and enjoy an hour-long program of music, storytelling and arts.
Mr. Simon?
Would you mind if I offer an additional piece of information to these young folks?
Sure. I mean, I would not mind.
Hopefully you're aware that UNICEF, United Nations Children Fund, is operating and has been operating a national and international fundraising program that provides desks for children in Malawi, Malawi schools. You might want to check in with them and see if there's a way you could either partner or, use synergy to enhance your program.
And Aaron, you want to say something else?
No, sorry, I think Mike had something.
Oh, sorry. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I have a 10-year-old daughter who has a big old bookshelf, so we'll be culling that to help out. But I'm wondering out loud if you ought to be talking to the library as well. They call their collection on a regular basis, so there might be a good number of books that the Urbana Free Library would have to be able to donate as well.
Bill?
Yeah, they also just had their book sale this last weekend, so they may have had leftovers from that, but they're probably good leftovers. So, I would definitely contact the library.
Thank you all for your project.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for coming to talk to us about it.
Thank you.
Amy Hatch?
Good evening. My name is Amy Hatch. I'm talking about something decidedly less interesting than marijuana and children's books. That is garbage. There is a lot of garbage in my neighborhood. I live in Ward 6 in Savannah Green, and every year around this time, along with the crocuses and the daffodils, we have garbage. And that is because in our neighborhood, our garbage is located on a back alley. So everyone leaves their cans out all the time. And this is because our development falls outside of Urbana zoning code, which is something I do not understand. In Urbana, as I understand it, if you are putting your garbage on the curb in the front of your home, you are required to pull your can back up either into your garbage or by your house, so that it does not blow open in these winds that we have and distribute garbage all over. However, that is not the case in my neighborhood. We have a back alley. So, because of this, consistently, I look out of my windows at garbage everywhere. My neighbor's yard, my yard, in the common areas, and in the land behind us that is not owned by the subdivision, but by, I believe, Menards. It's a field right now. My husband emailed Council Madigan twice on this matter in March. On March 22nd, March 30th, he did not hear back. So he emailed Mayor Pressing. Mayor Pressing, you referred us to Jason Arrowsmith, who referred us to our homeowners association. Now, we've already gone down that avenue with them. They do not have the funds for a cleanup. It's really incumbent on myself and my neighbors to clean up that trash. And I'm happy to do that, but it's in the common areas, and it's not limited to the area near my home. This is not a single homeowner issue. This is a quality of life issue in Urbana. That garbage does not stay in my neighborhood. It blows to the school. It blows over to Prairie. It blows over to Stone Creek. It is in every area on the road I can see. And it is, frankly, very frustrating to have paid as much as I paid for my home, watch it plummet in value $30,000 over the last 10 years, have my taxes raised, have no municipal services I can really speak to beyond fire and police, which are very important, but they do not address the quality of life issues that really go into making a neighborhood worth living in. And I've seen my neighborhood turn over in the last 10 years to renters. We have multiple foreclosures. And these are things we residents who live there, pay our mortgage, and pay our taxes can't combat when we are up against the kind of quality of life issues like garbage. I find condoms in my hydrangea bushes. I have 2 small children. And I would like to ask the council to please find a way to either grandfather us into the zoning so that we do have to put our garbage away, as I do, but my neighbors do not, or to help us find a way to clean this trash up. My homeowners association is almost broke. They cannot help. And this issue has been going on for more than a year. And last year when I spoke to Mr. Aerosmith about this, he told me that they could not change the law for one person. This is not for one person.
Well, what you're saying is you want the alleys to have to be cleared the same way that you would have it in
Correct.
front of your... I
Because-
don't think that would be
Yeah.
that difficult to do, but we will certainly, I will talk to the Community Development Department and see what we can do about changing it.
Thank you.
Charlie?
Yeah, my question would be, is the homeowners association responsible for plowing the alleys? Who plows
No,
the alleys?
the alley is plowed by the city.
Oh,
The
it
street is
Okay,
owned by
well,
the
okay,
city.
Okay, well, so that makes a huge difference. So I'm really puzzled why
Yeah, we are
it
not.
isn't already included in our ordinance.
It is not.
Okay. Yeah,
Because
okay.
it is the back of the
We
home.
change ordinances, so...
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, that's
You're at the right
good to
place.
know that it's a city, that
The
it's
city
city
plows.
property. That's
Yep.
that's a key point in enabling, I think, us to act.
Right. Where
Yeah.
the garbage mostly lands is supposedly owned or should be maintained by the homeowners association, but it's really hard to get a read on who owns that land. And then, the other part of it is I know that there was recently illegal dumping in Weaver Park, and we're not too far from Weaver Park. I would not be surprised, given the demographics around our neighborhood, that could possibly be happening. But overall, as a resident of Urbana for the last 10 years, and I come from a larger city, I come from the East Coast, we relocated here for school, and I have found overall that people take much less responsibility for the way their homes look here. I often see overgrown yards. I often see trash all over the front of a home. I often see cars up on blocks. I often see, up until a few years ago, upholstered furniture on porches until there was a tragic fire and a young lady died. And so an ordinance was created that you couldn't have upholstered furniture on your porch, which is just common sense. There's a home on South Dodson Street, which granted is not a wealthy street, but people still live there. It's been vacant since I moved in. It's literally falling down. Now a tree has fallen on top of it. Who's going to take care of that? Nobody. Where's eminent domain? Why hasn't that land been reclaimed by the city? There are a lot of things about Urbana that are great. There are many things about living in Urbana that are extremely frustrating. And one of them is the apparent lack of care that my fellow community members appear to have for their homes.
Well, if you give us the address of the one on Dodson, we do have registration of vacant properties, and we do take action to condemn properties and have buildings torn down. But we rely on the public to tell us where these places are.
I believe it's 503 or 502.
You want to just send me an email
I can
of where it
certainly
is?
do that.
Okay. Bill?
A lot of Dodson also isn't in the city, it's in the county.
Okay.
So that's part of a problem, too, that we've been dealing with for a long time. The county doesn't have...
So there's a strip of land in between two streets that are both Urbana streets that belongs to the county?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. That's good to know.
Did you want to say something, Diane?
I just had a question. Are the garbage cans that are in the alley, are they open cans that sit there all week, or what is?
They never come in. That's where the garbage cans live, on most of my neighbors' curbs at the end of their driveway. We have a back alley. We have a street that was supposed to be one-way, I believe, and was never actually turned into a one-way street. And then you're supposed to use the back alley to go out of the neighborhood. And so people just park their garbage can at the end of their driveway on this alley. And we've had 55-mile-an-hour winds. Urbana has two seasons, hot wind and cold wind.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if it's a closed container or not. It blows open, and that garbage goes everywhere. But there's far more garbage in that strip of land than could possibly come from residential garbage. I believe there's also something else going on that's beyond homeowner irresponsibility. But overall, my frustration has been not just the garbage, but also dealing with the city. I mean, Mr. Madigan, my husband reached out to you twice. We didn't hear back from you. I personally called you last year and left a message. I never heard back from you. It sort of feels like if you don't come to a town's council meeting and speak up, that there's no other way to reach somebody who's representing you. And that's really frustrating, especially when we pay as much as we do in property taxes.
Anyone else?
When can we get this on a committee agenda?
We could put it on next Monday.
Thank you very much.
But, you know, I did respond to you.
You did
and
right
I-
away, Mayor President, you
And I
really did.
wanted you to respond to me if you didn't get what you needed.
And
So-
that's why we're here, because, you know, Mr. Aerosmith just sent my husband a 2-line email that said, contact your HOA, it's their responsibility.
Okay.
And it is definitely my HOA's responsibility to help maintain it, but I'll be honest with you, I joined our HOA as a member at large. It's a mess. I mean, our dues are $60 a year. People just don't pay them. There were some homes that were $12,000 in arrears. Our accounts were $12,000 in arrears because people weren't paying their $60 a year. And it's interesting to me because I know, or I believe I know, that development was created to bring people like me into Urbana, create, you know, semi-affordable housing for us, and that subdivision is a failure. It really is. I don't know how it fell through the cracks, but I would say on my street alone, the 4 properties next to me and across from me are all renter occupied. They have not been owner occupied for years. The house across from me is foreclosed. It's been empty for years. It's really a sad thing that, you know, we all got tax breaks for moving in there too, and the neighborhood is an abject failure. I would be really interested to know from the board's perspective, both the planning board, the zoning board, and the council, whether or not that was worth it. Because I really feel like there's not a lot of room for people like me and my family in terms of the real estate prices here in Urbana. We're a young family. I'm the sole breadwinner. My husband's a PhD candidate. We have 2 choices. We can live in crappy student housing, or we can live in a 2-bedroom bungalow that we rent. This was a great option for us, but the project itself, I think, has really not panned out the way I believe you would have hoped.
Well, thank you for coming and talking with us.
Thank you very much.
Spencer Hadery.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to speak with you today about the proposal to lower the marijuana possession fine from $300 down to $50. I wanted to bring the student perspective to the table. The Illinois Student Senate actually put out a poll on our mailing list, and we got about 32 responses back. I just want to emphasize that that's not necessarily representative of the student body, but it did get a lot of different opinions to the table and everything. So 2/3 of the poll were in favor of lowering the fine for possession down from $300 to $50, or even more for that matter. And 1/3 were in favor of keeping it at the $300 mark. Other people who wanted it lowered, they think mainly that $300 is ridiculous in terms of a fine, and the majority want to see it down to $50. Others want to see it set even lower, and a lot of people believe that the city really shouldn't profit from something like this, especially when you bring the social justice aspect into it, that a lot of people of color are disproportionately fined and brought in for possession. Of those who do want to keep it at the current limit of $300, they believe that it shouldn't really be treated as less than a parking violation or jaywalking, because marijuana still is an illicit substance. Overall, just wanted to say that based on this poll, along with the conversations that I've had with students, the vast majority seem to definitely be in favor of lowering the fine from $300 down to $50.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Brian Dolinar.
Good evening, I'm Brian Dolinar. I live at 303 West Locust in Urbana. I'm also a member of CU Citizens for Peace and Justice, which for several years has advocated around racial disparities, in particular around the traffic stops that have been recorded by the Illinois Department of Transportation. So we want to thank folks who are supporting this ordinance change tonight, and council members who are willing to take a brave vote tonight, and really setting a trend. You hear now again and again, public opinion is in favor of lowering these fines and decriminalizing marijuana. the student vote here is 2/3 of them in favor of this kind of measure. And so we want to thank the council and note that this sends a strong message to the state for more further measures like this to really push back and erode, I think, what's a kind of old dying sense, a kind of public that's scared around these kind of proposals and these kind of archaic ideas which are slowly going away. The Department of Justice just issued a memo a few weeks back in light of what's become aware in Ferguson of the municipal fines being racked up to strap poor people in Ferguson, and certainly if we would look at fines in just about any city in the country, we're going to find these same kinds of ordinances that are excessively levied to impact the poor. And I would encourage Urbana Council to look at other ordinances that could be revised in light of this decision to take place tonight. So, I had a friend on Facebook today who was saying, well, this seems like such a small matter. Of all the big things we've got facing us, this seems like a relatively insignificant issue. But again, we want to highlight that this is taking place within a larger discussion that's been held over the past several years. We've been, for 8 to 10 years, we've been watching these racial profiling statistics that are coming back from the Illinois Department of Transportation and the stark racial disparities that they reveal in the city of Urbana. And this is just one small measure to put a dent in those disparities, but nonetheless a significant one. And it's important to keep this in mind, not just as a marijuana issue, but as a decriminalization issue. I think this is recognizing the overwhelming number of people incarcerated in the United States, 2.3 million people incarcerated, more than any other country on the planet. And this is one small measure to try to roll back these numbers. The governor, Rauner, has a commission out to address these numbers and reduce them. And yet we have seen no real significant downward turn in the numbers of people incarcerated in the United States, in Illinois particularly, which still hovers around 48,000 people in the IDOC in Illinois. And among those people in the IDOC, 58% of them black, while African Americans are 15% of the state population. So again, while this is just recognizably a small matter, I think it gives us a window into this larger and recognizing the larger issue that's all in front of us. So we want to congratulate and thank council members for those of you who are willing to take
Mr. Dolliner.
a bold step tonight. Muchas gracias.
Okay, I think there's a question for you, Brian. Bill Brown?
Yeah, Brian, thanks for coming tonight. So our ordinance currently is for 28 grams or less, $300 fine. And we're proposing lowering that to $30. And currently our officers have the ability to decide whether to prosecute that as a misdemeanor or as a city fine. And about half, a little bit less than half of the cases that, of possession that they find less than an ounce end up being charged as the city fine, and the other half as misdemeanors, which you can actually go to jail for. So can you explain to me how lowering our fine from $300 to $50 is going to encourage the police to arrest fewer people? That would be decriminalization.
Well, I would say, and I put the question on council, what measures are you doing to ensure that your police are doing more to decriminalize these kind of trivial offenses? Why are the police arresting and sending, threatening people with jail time, prison time for these small amounts? And so really I think, this is the issue of what poor folks can pay and what they will be paying whether they're, for a ticket, for a city ticket. And $300 seems excessive. $50 seems reasonable. $30 seems more reasonable. But again, it's about this taxing of the poor that I think is the important piece here. Now, as far as how do you reduce the number of people being arrested for small amounts of marijuana, you all have the power to do that.
I would just like to clarify that it was the initiative of the police department to have this alternative of a city ticket. I think we should give them credit for that because they felt that the state law was too harsh. So that was 2 police chiefs that tried to do this, and we got it done, I think, in 2007. But you should know that it was the initiative of the police department in Urbana.
Previous police chiefs, and that, as I understand, this most recent measure to lower the fines is come out of Representative Ammons
That's
and
true,
Representative
but I mean,
Jacobson in its most
having the
recent
local
incarnation.
option was the initiative of the Urbana Police Department. So I thought we should keep that in mind.
It's also the initiative of the police department to overwhelmingly arrest people for small amounts of marijuana.
Well, whatever you think.
In particular, African Americans. And until that issue is addressed, we're going to be back here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Martell Miller.
Martin Miller, City of Champaign. Thanks to council for having this discussion about lowering the marijuana fines. And I like the question you asked, how can we stop the police from making these different kind of arrests? And I want to give you an example of what someone just told me about 3 weeks ago. He's a professor on the university. And this is about a police contact with some people. It was a burglary at an apartment building on the University of Illinois. I ain't gonna say which the police department it was, but they knocked on the door. When the guy came to the door, he had a bong in his hand, smoking. Police walked in the room. They had ecstasy pills on the table. And you know what the officer told them? I'm not here for the drugs. I'm here for the burglary that a laptop was taken from an apartment down the hall. We want to know that you hear or see anything. That can happen in the black community. They can find a roach in the car, and it goes into a total search of a car for a large amount of marijuana from a joint. It's officer discretion. That's how you can stop these people from being charged. It's up to the officer. You know where that comes from, the officer discretion come from? If the chief of police said, we're not going to have these minor incidents coming in to wrecking someone's whole life. We have a state's attorney that goes on the radio station 1400 and says, I'm not going to charge students with felonies because they got another life to live at the 25 years old. But she still gives 17-year-olds in our community felonies. But that ain't nothing to do with y'all. But y'all going to deal with y'all police chief, with your officers on the street, on officer discretion. That's what racial profiling is, officer discretion. And we got a high rate of racial profile in this city. And it's up to the council members to stop that, from the mayor on down. You know, you can just call your police chief and say, you know, we can cut out some of this racial profile. And we start with you. If you can't fix it, we can find somebody who can. And that's up to the mayor to do that. You know, and that's how we deal with officer discretion. We need to do this all. It ain't just Urbana, it's all across the country. I've been coming in here for racial profiling since 2004. And you know how I got in here? We're talking to young African-American people in our community. And you know what they said? Me and Patrick was trying to start a mentor program. You know what they told us? We got problems with the police helpers with the police. And we said to them, y'all at the wrong place at the wrong time. Y'all getting caught for curfew and stuff like that. We blamed them at first until we took our time out to see what was happening to the kids. And when we seen what was happening to the kids was right. They didn't even have to break a law. And we talking about across the whole county, Champaign and Urbana. They were getting stopped and harassed by the police. They could be on a basketball court playing a game, leave the court. Since they're walking together to the store, they was challenged as a game. As the same officer seen them playing basketball, would had them taking their socks and shoes off and dumping their backpacks and treating them inhumane. I done seen officers treat young African Americans worse than they would treat a runaway dog. Y'all gave them tasers. They don't tase a dog for running. They don't beat a dog for running, but they beat human beings. And it's up to this council and the rest of the people in this city to stand up what's happening to young poor African American men. And officer discretion. That's how that can be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the Urbana City Council? Okay, we will move on. Unfinished business, I don't think we have any that we're going to deal with tonight. Reports of standing committees, the Committee of the Whole. Charlie?
Okay. For the committee, I move ordinance number 2016-325, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code, Chapter 1, Section 1-18, reducing the minimum fine for possession of cannabis from $300 to $50.
So moved.
I moved it.
Second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Ammons. Any discussion? Mr. Jacobson.
There was a lot said last week, but I'll just very briefly summarize my reasons. Also address an issue that was raised at me during the week. I guess one thing I'll say is sort of personal. I don't have to be told about the dangers of drug use. My father was an abusive alcoholic. My mother died of lung cancer, which was probably due to her cigarette smoking. I have not had firsthand experience with marijuana, so what I know about it, except for breathing a little bit of secondhand smoke at social gatherings, what I know about it is what I've read and heard, and I've tried to study the issue. One of the things that was a complaint that was addressed to me during the week was had to do with the criminal network that supplies a lot of marijuana. And weren't we encouraging folks to contribute to that network by buying marijuana? And my response to that, I've read many papers, the results of many studies. And the fact is that there is essentially no relationship between the severity of penalties for using marijuana and the prevalence of marijuana use. So there's absolutely no reason to believe that if we lower this fine, we're going to have more use. Now, I thought one of the things that was said today, earlier in public participation, was very cogent, which is why don't we have a sliding scale of fines for marijuana possession based on the amount? And my only answer to that is we didn't think about it, because in the course of constructing the ordinance that's in front of us, Alderman Ammons and I started with the idea of a token fine at $5. But we didn't have 4 votes for that. So $50 was as low as we could go and get the votes. If we had had another kind of course of deliberation, we might have arrived at that sliding fine. The other thing that I want to say is I don't believe, we'll see, we can review all of this in a year. I do not believe that the public will actually behave differently in terms of prevalence of marijuana use. I do not believe that the police will behave differently with respect to doing more misdemeanor arrests if we lower the fine. I think that they will behave professionally and do what they think is appropriate, whether it should be a misdemeanor or whether they think it should be a citation. But we'll see in a year or so, once this has a chance to work. So Ultimately, I think that marijuana should be in the categories of alcohol and cigarettes, should be legalized, regulated, and taxed. It's not in our power to do that. But the really big thing that's going to happen when we pass this ordinance, as I think we have the votes to do, is that the disparate impact of these fines between black people and white people will be substantially reduced. It won't be eliminated, but it'll be reduced. And my hope is that with a largely white council voting to reduce that impact, that in itself will do at least a little bit to improve the entire relationship that we have between people of different races in this community. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Bill Brown.
When we first started talking about lowering the fine December, I think when Carol Spindell from ACLU brought it up, I figured it would come to us in our list of fines, and it would be one of those where it's $300, we cross it out and make it $150, and that would be it. But I've really appreciated the several weeks of discussion we've had on this. I think it's been important, and it's been good to think through everything. So I'm glad we did go the other route and make it a little bit more of a conscious decision rather than just a lowering of the fine. I still think there's good reasons to make it $100. It might be a little bit more consistent with some of our other fines. I think we should look at our smoking ordinance that imposes a $165 fine for smoking cigarettes, but doesn't mention cannabis. So we would probably be wise to either add cannabis to that, so that if you're smoking on the patio, iron post or something, and you can actually get a $165 fine because you're interfering with the public and maybe causing a little bit more of a public nuisance than you would be if you were in your backyard or something. So that's something I think we should look at in the future. I don't know about whether it will make a difference in the number of misdemeanors arrests. I don't think they'll go down, so I can't really say that this is decriminalization. It's a lower fine for the end user. It doesn't do anything for the people that are caught in the middle. I mean, the end user kind of gets off easy, even though, you're not the one taking the big risk. The ones taking the big risk is, the gentleman pointed out, is like Vincent Mundo that was dealing half pounds or whatever and getting a few extra dollars per ounce for selling it to the end user for the partying and everything. So that's just something that's been on my mind. Is I think it's a little disingenuous to just kind of give the consumer a break when it's a lot of people in between that are actually taking the risks and taking the big risks. As far as affordability of the fine, I did look at what little information we had in the open data over the last 6 years. The employment status of the people who are arrested, and for the people that get the ticket, actually have a lower unemployment than any of the other cannabis violations. If you charge with a misdemeanor, if you're selling cannabis, your unemployment tended to be like 30 to 50%. For the people that get the ticket, the unemployment was about 20%. So, maybe those people can't afford to pay a little bit. So we didn't actually get to vote on $100. I don't know if it would be any different, but I think I would like to go ahead and propose an amendment to change the 50 to 100 and see if it gets a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's been a motion to amend the ordinance to change it from 50 to 100 by Bill Brown, seconded by Mike Madigan. We could vote on the amendment if there's no further discussion. Diane.
As I said last week, and I still would be more comfortable with a tiered system. That approach makes sense to me, and I think it was stated last week that 85% of all the users are charged with possession of 10 grams or less, so I think a $50 fine for 10 grams or less is perfectly reasonable. But for larger amounts between 11 to 30, I think 100 grams to me seems, $100 seems more reasonable. A man in my ward was shot over about 30 grams of marijuana a couple of weeks ago, so there are consequences to these larger amounts. And 10 grams is consistent with the break in champagne. Not that we make ourselves like champagne, but anyway, so that's where I would be.
Well, why don't we take a vote on the motion that's on the floor, and if somebody wants to make a different motion after that, you're free to do so. All in favor of the...
Madam
yeah.
Mayor,
Did you want
I
to say
believe that the motion that is on the floor is the one that Charlie made and that I second.
Yeah, this
So
is
we're
a
taking a
voting,
vote to
this is a
support the
vote on an amendment to change the number from 50 to 100. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Okay. That motion, all those opposed? That motion fails. Diane?
I would offer an amendment to make it $50 for 10 grams or less and $100 for 11 to 30 grams.
Okay. A motion by Marlon, is there a second to that?
I'll second that. I think it's even better.
Okay, seconded by Madigan. Any discussion? Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings on that. One nice thing about having one consistent amount from 0 to 28 is that the officers don't have to stop and think about it and where the cutoff is. Although, I guess if the state law passes where it's 10 grams or less, then they would have to think about it anyway, because then there might be other options. You know, there's good things about having the lower fine. I would think from the police perspective in some ways, because it lowers the kind of the whole the potential for I mean, it just kind of de-escalates the whole situation. If you come up to a car, you smell marijuana or something, say, hey, I could give you a $50 fine. You know, maybe that would actually relieve some people, and it would de-escalate a little bit. And so 50 or 100, I don't know if there's a lot difference. I just thought that for a lot of practical reasons, 100 made sense, and it would fit better more with our other fines. But I'll support that for what it's worth.
Dennis?
Well, I think we've done a lot of good work to try to equalize the effect of our fine system on disadvantaged people, and I don't see any reason right now to muck around with it and try to make split hairs over little amounts, which I don't think the officers are going to be carrying, you know, scales to find out where, you know, exactly where to weigh in on this. I think we should just go ahead, do this very simple thing, give ourselves credit for having clear thought, not try to like second guess ourselves at the late hour. If you want to perhaps work on a tiered system in the future, and you want to talk about larger amounts in this system, I'm open to that. But right now, for the small amount that we're talking about, I don't think we have to dilute it. I think we should actually be very forceful and go ahead and be pretty proud of being able to make an amendment that, or to pass an ordinance that actually serves the community. So $50 flat, that's it for me. I'm not going to support doubling or tripling the divisions.
Anyone else? All those in... Okay, Mr.
I
Madigan,
just have
go
another
ahead.
question. I asked this during the committee of the whole, and wasn't quite sure that the answer I got was a complete answer. So 30 grams of marijuana, what is the street value of that? The information that the police gave me, and I assume are going to take that with a grain of salt, was that was could be as much as $300 of street value. So I'm still just having a lot of having a lot of difficulty with a $50 fine for something that has a $300 street value, when the argument is that folks can't pay that fine. I thought $100 was still at least treating it like it was somewhat of a punitive offense, even though it's still as little as a third of the street value of the drug. My other difficulty here is this is still a criminal offense in the eyes of the state. This has not been decriminalized, and we are, as a local government, subordinate to the state. We obviously have our, home rule powers, and we have the ability to have some flexibility with our structure of offenses for certain things. But I still am just having difficulty with someone giving me a rational explanation for why the fine for illegal possession of a drug should be 1/6 of its street value. If someone can give me a rational explanation for that, I'm more than willing to hear it, but no one has given me one.
Charlie?
Yeah, I think the explanation is that it's disproportionate impact. It's disparity. And it's because more black folk are getting ticketed than white folk when, in fact, we've got equal usage in the population. So it's not, I don't think I view this as something that's punitive so much as trying to, or making something less punitive or more punitive. It's trying to figure out a way to begin to address the issue of disparities because of the way policing is done. And we're going to get into that in the coming weeks. So this is, maybe this is putting the cart before the horse, but it's here now, and I want to just start down the road of trying to address disparities.
Okay, we have an amendment, a motion on the floor by Marlin, seconded by Madigan, to have the fine be $50 for less than 10 grams and $100 for less than 30 grams. Or maybe it's 30 grams or less. Or 10 grams or less. Okay, sorry. Okay, all those in favor of that amendment, please signify by saying aye.
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 I guess we'll have a show of hands. I think that's only 3, though, correct? Okay. Well, all those opposed? Then that motion fails. Okay, we're back to the original motion, which is to amend the fine from $300 down to $50. And we have a motion by Smythe, seconded by Ammons. Is there any other discussion? Would the clerk please? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
So I just want to make it clear. It's not that I am opposed to a reduction in the fine. I think it ought to have a rational basis, and I am not convinced that $50 is necessarily rational. I think frankly the way to go here is to press the state, as we have done on other issues, perhaps with a resolution. Maybe there's a council member who could lobby constituent number one. And I know she has actually been supportive of that and has co-sponsored legislation in this regard. And frankly, the governor has been supportive of, decriminalizing and reducing the prison population. So, to me, as Charlie said, this is somewhat putting the cart before the horse. We ought to be pressing, if that is the will of the council, for state action to work on decriminalization prior to making a token fine and not a rational fine for what is still a criminal offense.
Madam Mayor.
Okay. you're first.
We've
Folks
had
going
ample
online.
discussion on this. I would like to call the question, please.
There's still people who want to
But
say
we've had,
something.
no,
Okay,
people are
Charlie
saying
wants
the
to
same
say
things
something.
over and over again, and the rules say if people are going to say the same things over and over again, we've already heard it, and we do not have to go through that over and over again. Everybody has spoke on this. I've asked for the question to be called, and that is proper and decent and in order according to Robert's rules.
Point of order.
Um,
I think call the question requires 2/3 vote.
Okay, Charlie, go ahead.
What I was going to add was that we've already started discussion of what fines we can address with the state. Sorry, allergies. What we can address with the state. For example, the automotive and insurance-related ones are very complicated. Would require us to have completely duplicate the state vehicle code. That's something we're not simply not going to do. We do have to address the state. We have to request the state to start looking at income-based fines or something like that to address the disparity issues that come up and the related issues that Mike has brought up. We're going to have to do that regardless, and I think that's something that came out almost 2 months ago when we first started this discussion. So in some ways we've had that discussion. We know we're going to have to do that. So in that sense, this is not putting the cart before the horse. This is the only thing we can really do within our ordinances that has an impact on the fines that are collected.
Okay. Okay, Eric was first, and then Bill, and then Dennis.
I would just point out that what we seem poised to do tonight and passing a resolution to tell the state what we would like them to do are not mutually exclusive, and I would certainly be glad to help in crafting and supporting and passing such a resolution in addition to what we're doing now.
Bill, and then Dennis.
Yeah, I'll just clarify that I'm also in favor of legalization and decriminalization. And I think that really the only way we're going to have honest conversations about the health effects of marijuana is to legalize it, because a lot of times people are afraid to talk about the bad things because they'll be criticized for being part of some group with a conspiracy or something, and people are minimize the problems with marijuana will be criticized for saying, oh, you just want to get it legalized, and so nobody can really trust anything anybody says until it's legal. So we need to make it legal so we can have that honest conversation. And so I would support any kind of resolution we can do for that. And I think if it is legalized, probably half the high school students would say it's not cool anymore and I won't smoke it. So that's another good reason.
Dennis?
Yeah, I just want to say that I appreciate trying to come to a clear decision based on fact or proof or premises that we can all grasp. The rational mind would like to have a reason for everything that happens in the world, but the world is really made of elements that go beyond just rationality. There is some mystery in life. There is also a desire among civilizations to show compassion and understanding, and not every decision needs to be based on proof, rational proof. Sometimes if you're forward-thinking or idealistic, or if you have a vision that's greater than what can be expressed by mathematics, you're going into situations where you're going to make decisions based on perhaps your gut feeling or your sense of justice or some other thing. And you don't have to base it necessarily on, asking for proof or a rational reason for. Maybe there are other reasons in life that we can use to make our good decisions. And of course, we can also make bad decisions, but time will tell.
Okay, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ammons?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
No.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay, next up is ordinance number 2016-324, an ordinance amending Schedule Q of Section 23-64 of Urbana Local Traffic Code, decreasing state speed limits on certain streets. this is Green Street between Wright Street and Lincoln, Springfield between Wright and Lincoln, and it's to change the speed limit from 30 to 25. For the committee, I so move.
A second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Roberts. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ammons?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay, next up is Resolution 2016-317R, a resolution approving an Emergency Solutions Grants Program subrecipient agreement with Champaign County Regional Planning Commission for the fiscal year 2015-2016. For the committee, I so move.
I'll second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Roberts. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ammons?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Item D, Resolution Number 2016-318R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization Agreement, Habitat Choto Developer Fiscal Year 2015-2016. For the committee, I so move.
And I'll
Second.
Go ahead, Irk.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Jacobson. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ammons?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes. Item E, Resolution.
That motion carries.
Item E, Resolution 2016-319R, a resolution certifying a community housing development organization for the Urbana Home Consortium, Habitat, February 2016. For the committee, I so move.
I'll
Second.
second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Ammons. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ammons?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes, can I, do we have to specify that this statement is added to the article we received in our packet tonight?
For the record, I'll
Okay.
accept that as a friendly amendment.
And yes.
Is that
Mr. Roberts?
agreeable with the second, Mr. Ammons?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Ms. Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes. Sorry, I should have stated that in advance.
is there any objection to that? There's no objection, so we'll just have it be included. Mr. Smythe?
Yeah, Resolution 2016-320R is a resolution approving the transfer of volume cap in connection with private activity bond issues, single-family mortgage, revenue bonds, and related matters, private bond cap allocation, Assist Program Series 2016. For the committee, I so move.
Second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Marlin. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Mr. Ammons?
Just looking for further understanding and explanation of private activity bond issues. What does that mean exactly?
Here comes the answer.
Here's your explanation.
Sorry, could you please repeat the
Yes,
question?
private activity bond issues. What does that mean?
The way I understand a bond cap is sort of, in a sense, transferring a portion of the city's credit, basically allowing this agency or the agencies to use a portion of the city's credit for community development purposes.
A private entity to use the city's credit.
Well, we have like a limit, and so we're allowing part of our limit to
Yes.
be reduced so that somebody else can use that part.
Yes, that's correct.
Who
And
is the somebody else?
Is the Eastern Illinois Economic Development Authority. Yes, the bond cap is being transferred to that agency for the purposes of first-time homeowner assistance and also for use for other community development actions.
Charlie?
Elizabeth's not here to explain some of this, but I think, as I understand it, there's the state is sort of behind this, and this is another state-recognized organization that qualifies for the use of state funds, and it's all tied together under those limits that are imposed on us by the state.
But it is for the public good.
And
Okay, Dennis.
And isn't it true that actually if we don't utilize it, it disappears? I mean, it can't be, it goes fallow, basically, it's unusable then at that point.
The way I understand it, yes.
So we don't have a way of reusing it, but these people do, and they're working with us and in partnership with us, so we're happy to extend this credit to them.
That is correct.
And we're not
Okay. Eric.
Thank you for the explanation.
Yeah, as I understand it, the benefit to the person who is issuing the bonds is that because the bonds are tax exempt, which is because they're municipal bonds, then they can be issued at a lower interest rate than they otherwise would. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a federal subsidy.
In a sense, yeah.
Because it's because it would be the federal government that would get the interest, that would get the interest rate, the differential interest rate, but it's okay.
All right, so any other questions on this? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ammons?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries.
And the companion to that is Resolution 2016-321R, a resolution approving the transfer volume cap in connection with private activity bond issues, single-family mortgage revenue bonds, and related matters. This is a private bond cap allocation to EIEDA, Series 2016. For the committee, I so move.
Second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Ammons. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ammons?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries. Are there any reports of special committees? Reports of officers? No reports of officers. Okay. New business. Ordinance number 2016-04-028, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of certain real estate. Okay, so I believe that Bill Gray is going to talk about this. Director of Public Works.
Thanks. In the last 2 weeks, a lot of things have transpired with right-of-way negotiations on North Lincoln Avenue, and with the 4 property owners mentioned, listed in this memo, we have come to an agreement on price for the right-of-way to be purchased, and the attached ordinance then allows for the mayor and clerk to sign the necessary real estate agreements to conclude those acquisitions. It's our hope that we will complete this before the end of the month, and we would then be hopeful to have go for a June 10th letting with IDOT. And if we're successful with a good bid, contracts signed, construction could start around August or so, but we would get more information from the contractor's schedule at that time. So that's the current timetable.
Okay, any questions for Bill?
Move approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Roberts. Any other discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Ammons?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Congratulations, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.